Hakadosh Boker Or, Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Yomi Daf Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph 93a1. We're going to start on the last line of Tzadik Bet Amud Bet. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan. Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph on the top. Gedolim Tzadikim Yoter mi Malachei Asharet. Do you know that the Tzadikim are even greater than Malachei Asharet? So he says, Shneimar b'zeh pasuk, Aneh ve'amar, Hanach hazeh govrin abein sherim, sherayin me'alachim begonura, v'chaval la itai behon, ve'reva di revia dameh lebar elahin. What does that mean? Nebuchadnezzar comes and he says, I see inside of the furnace 4 people, right? Which basically they're not tied up, right? Because when they were thrown into the furnace, they were tied up. They're going in the fire, and they don't have any chabala or petza. And they look like, right? He looks like a malach. Yeah, so he says there are 3 people, right? Which is basically Hanan, Mishav, Azariah. And the 4th one is a malach that he came down to save them. So since it was brought down the tzaddikim in the pasuk before the malach, it's mashma that the tzaddikim are even greater than malachei asharet. אמר רבי תנחום בר חנינא, בשעה שיצאו חננים ומישאל ועזריה בכבשן האש, באו כל האומות העולם וטפחו לשונאיהם של ישראל על פניהם. The time that they came out of the furnace, all the umot haolam, they came and they started hitting Kilu Yisrael on their faces. Amru lahem, they told them, Yesh lachem Eloah kazeh? You guys have a God like this, Atem mishtachavim letzelem, and you're going to come and you're going to be bowing down to a tzelem? So he says, what does that mean? Blood, you're going to start bowing down to idols if you have a God that's going to save you from the furnace, from the fiery furnace? Miyad patchu ve'amru, immediately they opened and they said, the pasuk lecha Adonai tzedakah v'lanu b'oshet hapanim kayom hazeh. What does it mean? Kayom hazeh, right? It's always, they also had lecha Hashem tzedakah, and also b'oshet panim. They had HaKadosh Baruch Hu did tzedakah for all of Am Yisrael, plus the b'oshet panim. Amar Rabbi Yishmael ben Nachmani ben Rabbi Yonatan. Says Rabbi Yishmael ben Nachmani in the name of Rabbi Yonatan. My dichtiv, what does it mean in the pasuk? Amarti ele betamar uchazav b'san sinav. So he says like this: Amarti ele betamar elu Yisrael. I'm going to say that we're going to go up in the Taman. We're talking about Bnei Yisrael, that they are compared to the dekel, to the palm tree. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says that I want to go up, which means I want to become holy through them. Yeah? But now I only have 1 branch. What is that? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, what does it mean in the pasuk? Raiti alayla, hine ish rochev al sus adom v'hu omed ben hadasa shebemetzula v'acharav susim adomim srukim. So he says, what exactly are we seeing over here? What does it mean, Raiti Alayla? So he says like this, Raiti Alayla, he comes and he says, is as follows. Raiti Alayla, ish rochev sus. So he says like this, My Raiti Alayla, he wanted to destroy the entire world, just like the Laila. What does it mean? He wanted to destroy it. Why? They went and they bowed down to the Tzelem, to the Avodah Zarah during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Vine ish rochev. Now, what does it mean now, ish rochev? En ish el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The ish here is referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shneimar Hashem ish v'nechama Hashem shemo. Al sus adom. What does it mean now, al sus adom? We're on Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph. Yeah, and towards Shebikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu lafoch et haolam kulo ledam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to change the entire world to dam. Once he came and he looked at Chanyam Mishav Azariah, that they were moser nefesh, not to bow down to the tzelem, it's karira dato. He was appeased. Shneimar b'tzad pasuk v'umed ben hadasa asher b'metzulah ve'en hadasim and tzadikim. So what are the hadasim exactly? Tzadikim. Shneimar b'tzad pasuk v'hi omenet hadasa. What does that mean? Esther tzadeket is called hadasa ve'en metzulah bavel. What is metzulah bavel? It says in the pasuk, omer latzulah. Immediately they become angry, so they become, right, because of the roges, they become upset, so they become red. Yeah, so nasu levarim, they become white. What does that mean? That after you looked at the tzaddikim, it changed the midat adin, which was red, to midat harachamim, which is white. Remember that red is midat adin and white is midat rachamim. Rav Papa says, Shema Mina, we learn from here. Susia chivara ma'aleh lechal madash. You see a white horse in your dream, it's actually a good siman. Why? It's rachamim, it's chesed. Okay? But Rabbanan lechal. So ask the Gemara, where did they go? Meaning, Chanina Mishav Azriya, they were just saying for the Kivshanash, where did they go? Amar Rav, Ba'inara metu. They died because of Ainara. Remember, they were thrown into a furnace, and then they were taken out of the furnace alive. So the fact that they were thrown into a furnace and taken out, what happened? They died with Ainara. Shmuel says, Berok tavu. What does that mean? Berok tavu, right? He says, with rock. What does that mean? It says when they took them out of the Kivshana Esh, right? They went and they were saying, what? This, you have such a God, and this is what you did. So therefore, he says, right? So they went and they drowned in this rock. Here it says in the footnote, what does that mean? It looks very, very weird. Okay. It says that because of the busha, they were so embarrassed, they didn't know what to do. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Alu Eretz Israel. They went up to Eretz Israel, and they had children. So says the Gemara, Ketanai, it's actually Machlok Ketanaim. Rabbi Eliezer says, Bain Adam Metu. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Berok Tavu. Chachamim Omrim, Alu Eretz Israel, Nasu Shem Lebarim Munot, like Rabbi Yochanan. So basically, this Amoraim of Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan was actually going to be a Machlok between Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, right, and Chachamim. Shneimar Shemana Yehoshua Kohen Gadol. What is the Anshe Mofet? What does it mean that there was a miracles done to them? That's going to be, right? Chanya Mishael Vazaria. Okay. What about Daniel? But Daniel Echanazal. We know if Chanya Mishael Vazaria were thrown into the furnace, where was Daniel during that time? Samarav Lemichra Nara Rabba B'Tveria. He went to start digging a big river in Tveria. Shmuel says, Latuye Bizar dis pasta. To bring us pasta. Pasta is a type of animal food, right? He was sent. Rabbi Yochanan says, they sent him to bring chazirim from the city of Alexandria, Mitzrayim, in order to be megadelotam, right? Because obviously they were much better. The pigs in Mitzrayim, in Alexandria, were better than in other cities. So says the Gemara, any is that so? But now we learned to the Mishnah, to those of Omer, right? En parava chazirim Mitzrayim, shen chotchina em shela, shel teled. Do you know that when they used to export their animals, they would automatically take out their uterus? They would take out the entire womb. Why? So that way they wouldn't be able to give birth. So therefore, how can you tell me that they went to Egypt, to Alexandria of Egypt, to take out the pigs in order to grow them up in what's it called, in Greece, right? In order for them to have good, in Babel, this is in Nebuchadnezzar, in Babel, in Babylonia. In order to have more of them there, they used to take them out. So they weren't able to have, meaning the second they left Egypt, boom, they weren't able to have children. So what was the purpose? So answers the Gemara, he brought the small ones. When he brought the small ones, they didn't realize. So what happened was they didn't take off the uterus, so therefore they were able to give birth. So they brought they imported the small ones without them realizing, in order that they should have the pigs there in Babylonia in order to grow them up, and they had the best pigs in the world in Alexandria. It's not us, it's the king of Babel. This is Nebuchadnezzar, but he sent Daniel, that he was one of the, how do you call them? He was one of the ministers, like he was a minister under Nebuchadnezzar. So that's what he sent in order to get them. Okay, fine. We learned to the Braita. Do you know that there were three people in the Etzah that were with Daniel? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Daniel, and Nebuchadnezzar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he says, Nezel Daniel mehacha. Daniel is going to go out of here. In order that they shouldn't say that it was in his zechut that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were saved. Meaning, Daniel, if he was there, maybe the only reason why Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were saved was because of Daniel. So he purposely sent Daniel out of the city, like out of town, basically he was away, in order that they shouldn't say such a thing. Daniel comes and he says, Izil mehacha, I'm going to leave from here, right? Because then I'm going to be afraid that maybe they're going to be burnt, right? Because they made Daniel into a god himself. And therefore he was afraid that if they make him into a Zara, he won't be able to be saved. So he left. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, Yazil Daniel Nebuchadnezzar said that Daniel has to leave. To lo lemru, that they shouldn't say that they shouldn't say that he burnt his god in the fire. Because since they made Daniel into a fire, right, it was going to be a problem. How do you know that they bowed down? That means, how do we know that Nebuchadnezzar bowed down to Daniel? Tichtiv, it says in a pasuk, "Be'aden malka Nebuchadnezzar nefal al hapui u'Daniel tzegad." So therefore, it's written over here, right, that Nebuchadnezzar went and he bowed down to Daniel, so he made him into a god. Okay, fine. Next, this is to do with the miracle again of Chayam Mishal v'Zariah. Ko amar Hashem Tzavakot. This is what Hashem Tzavakot said. Elokei Yisrael, the God of Israel, Lachav ben Kuria v'Tzidkiyahu b'Mesiah Neviim levechem Ishvin v'Shaken. Uchtiv, and it says v'likach b'hem klala lechol galut Yehuda shebabel lemor, to say Yisimcha Hashem ketzidkiyahu chachav v'shekala melech Babel v'esh. Asher serafam lo ne'emar. It doesn't say that they were burnt. Asher kalam. Kalam is like kalui ba'esh, which means why is it mentioned that different? It doesn't say they were like toasted. It doesn't say that they were burnt. They were what does that mean? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says of Yochanan in Yom Shimon Yochai, Melamed Shasan Klayot. He made them like klayot. What does that mean? You know, that they're toasted kernels. You don't burn them. You know, toast them a little bit. Yana Sherasu Nevela Beisavin Food Neshe Rehem. What does that mean now? Mayavul. What did they do exactly? What did these Nevi'im Sheker do for immorality? Azul Legabe Barte de Nebuchadnezzar. They went to the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Right? And Achav Amarla, and Achav told her, Koman Hashem Hashmil Tzidkiyahu. Achav comes and he says, listen to Hashem. Right? This is what Hashem says. Go to live with Tzidkiyahu, to do the Avodah with Tzidkiyahu. But Tzidkiyahu Amar, and then Tzidkiyahu would say, Koman Hashem, you have to listen to Achav. As Lava Amrali Lavua, so she went and she said to her father, Amarla, right? She said, what's going on here? Meaning the two people are coming and telling me that Hashem says I have to live with them. And each one is telling me the other one. And it's a little bit crazy. What's going on? So Amarla Nebuchadnezzar says, Elohim Shelelu Solezimahu. He said, well, what are you talking about? Their God hates immorality. Right? When they come to you, send them to me. When they came to her, she sent them to the father. Amarla, he told them, what did Hashem say to you? Amru, they said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, what? It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, he told us. Says one time, but I asked Chayam Mishal v'Zariah, and they told me that it's a sur. Amrullah, they said to him, Ananami Navi, I'm also a Navi like them. They didn't tell them, they told us. Amalu, he says, okay. He says, I'm going to test you like I tested Chayam Mishal v'Zariah. I took Chayam Mishal v'Zariah and I threw them into a furnace, a fire. That's how he tested them. So I'm going to test you guys like I tested them. Amrullah, they said, Inun tlatavu. They said, yeah, but they were three, we were two. So Amaleu, he said, choose a third one. That's your excuse. Choose a third one. Amru, they said, Yoshua Kohen Gadol. Said, no problem. They chose the Kohen Gadol. Why? They thought that in the merit of the Kohen Gadol, Savri, they're going to be saved because of the Kohen Gadol. Right? Ach, to you, they brought him down from Oziel to Bavel. Beshadinu, they threw three of them. Inu iklu, they were burnt and died. Yoshua Kohen Gadol, his clothing were burnt. Shneimar, vayireni at Yoshua Kohen Gadol u'mei lifnei melech Hashem uchtiv, vayomer Hashem l'Satan yigar Hashem lecha. What does that mean? That means his clothing were burnt, but he himself didn't get killed. He wasn't killed. He wasn't burnt. So Elmaleh, he says, Yadana tzadikat. I know that you're a tzadik, obviously. But he asked him, what was the difference in you and Chayam Mishal v'Zariah? Chayam Mishal v'Zariah, not even their clothing were burnt. Your clothing was burnt. So what's going on? So he says, Elmaleh, he told them, Inu tlatavu v'anu chad. There are three and I'm one. Amalehu, he says, yeah, Avraham avayachid. He says, yeah, Avraham was one also. Avraham was one. So he says, Hatam lo avru sheba yadav lo tidu shulto l'nura. He says there, right, there were no Rishaim with him in the Kivshan Esh. And therefore the Esh did not turn on at all. Meaning the fire was not able to do anything because there was no Rishaim with Avraham Avinu. Here, the Rishaim were with me. And therefore the fire was there. That's what the people say. If you have two dry pieces of wood and one wood which is moist, that wasn't burnt on its own, they're going to also burn the rest of it with it. Which means that's why Achav Tzidkiyahu, they were fitting to be burnt, right? And therefore the third one was also burnt a little bit. Now, why was Yoshua Kohen Gadol bemet punished? Yeah, why was he punished? So he says, Amar of Papa, says Rav Papa, Shayu banav nosim nashim shenem magulo keuna velo micha bahen. His children got married to women which are not fitting to the keuna, and he didn't make a mecha. He didn't rebuke them. Meaning his children went, and they got married to, all these types of women that they're not allowed to. He didn't say anything. That's why he was punished. Right? Because it says in the pasuk, he was covered with dirty clothing. He says what? That's normal. He didn't rebuke them. So because of that, he was punished that his clothing were burnt. Right? He himself wasn't burnt, but his clothing was burnt. Amar Rabbi Tanchum says if the Chum darash kapara betzipori, what does it mean in the pasuk? Shesh seirim haele natan li. My shesh seorim. What do you mean shesh seorim? Seorim is like barley. You're going to tell me 6 grains, kernels of barley itself. He says, I don't understand. Boaz comes and he's going to give to Ruth, right, into 6 kernels of barley. What's going on? Tzadikim Lamubet, 93b. Ela, but rather, shesh se'in. It's 6 se'ah of barley. Okay? Se'ah is like 144 beitzim. Says, well, can a woman carry 16? It's very heavy. He gave her a remes. Shatidin shisha banim, that in the future there's going to be 6 children that are going to come out from her, which are going to be blessed. And who is that? David Melech, Mashiach, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Vazariah. David Melech, it's written, right? הנה ראיתי בן לישי בית הלחמי, ידע נגן, וגיבור חיל ואיש מלחמה ונבון דבר וישתואר והשם עמו. Hashem is with him. So those are 6 berachot. He was Yodea Nagan, right? Gibor Chayil, Ish Milchama, Navon Davar, Ish Toar, Vashem Imo. 6 berachot to David HaMelech. Amar Rav Yudah Amarav says, the entire pasuk was, Lo Amro Doeg Ela B'Shon Hara. Do you know that even though it's 6 blessings, Doeg Adomi, that we already spoke about at the beginning, that he doesn't have a Chelak Olam Ba, he was speaking Lashon Hara about these 6. Why? Yodea Nagan, Sheyodea Lishol. He knows לשאול כעניין. גיבור, שיודע להשיב כהלכה. איש מלחמה, שיודע לסיים את מלחמתה של תורה. He knows how to learn תורה. איש תואר, שמראה פנים להלכה. He knows הלכה. נבון דבר, he's מבין דבר מתוך דבר. He understands one thing from another. והשם עמו, הלכה בכמותו בכל מקום. The הלכה came in everywhere. דואג אדוני said this on how do you call this? On David HaMelech. So now, what does that mean exactly? No. So the reason why is because he was saying the Shevach of David HaMelech in order to arouse animosity and jealousy, right, from Shaul, so that way Shaul will kill him. When you go to an enemy of someone and you start counting their praises, that's called Lashon Hara. You say, well, Lashon Hara, you only said good things. Yeah, that's Lashon Hara because you are right now causing animosity that you want him to kill him. וכולו אמר לו. בכולו אמר לו, he says on all these shivachim, right? Yonatan beni kamo, right? He also had his ma'alot. Kevin da amar le, once he said Vashem imo, mean to the nami lo havabe, right? It was something that even Shaul did not have. So chalash tadeh, meaning everything else. He says what? Even my son Yonatan had like David. Everything that he said at the beginning, Yonatan also had. Yonatan was the best friend of David, if you remember, right? Right? And but what? So once he said Vashem imo, that the halakha is like David in every single place, he didn't even have it himself. So then then he started getting jealous. Because he says that he was not so that the halakha was like him everywhere. But David, it says, the halakha was like him in Chol Makom. So obviously he started getting jealous. And that's where the problem started. So Minalan Doeg, how do we know there was Doeg that said this? It says, it says one of the Na'arim said this, and it says, the Shamish Meavdeh Shaul Bayom Ha'un Nentzad. So this is a proof that it was Doeg Adomi speaking right to Shaul. Okay, the next one, Mashiach. He also had 6 berachot. It says in the pasuk, "V'nachal ruach Hashem, ruach chokma u'bina, ruach etzah u'gvura, ruach ta'at v'yirat Hashem." So again, ruach Hashem, ruach chokma u'bina, ruach etzah u'gvura, ruach ta'at v'yirat Hashem. So those are also 6. Chokma, bina, etzah, gvura, dat, and yirat Hashem. Right? Varicho b'yirat Hashem. What's the door? Right? So he says, what does that mean now? Varicho b'yirat Hashem. That they're going to come and they're going to see, right? They're going to smell the yirat Hashem. Amar Rabbi Alexandri Melamed, we learn from here, Shituno mitzvot v'yisurim kerechaim, that they had a mitzvot, right? And yisurim just like a rechaim. Rechaim is like a mill, right? What does that mean? So too Melech HaMashiach is going to have a lot of mitzvot, and he's also going to have a lot of yisurim, because there's going to be a lot of yisurim before the Geulah. Rava comes and he says, the Morach v'dayin, that he was meriach and he was judged, meaning he would come and he would smell and he's able to judge. He would smell. Yeah, he's going to smell. He'll be able to judge. He's not going to judge according to his eyes. He's going to do everything just by smelling. He could smell the truth. Right? That's where the concept comes from. Do you smell? I can smell something. Smell the truth. That's from Mashiach. Because Mashiach will be able to smell. And that's how he's able to know. He doesn't need to do. He doesn't need to see with his eyes. Everything's going to be with smell. Bar Koziva, do you know that there was a person called Shimon Bar Kochva? Right? Bar Koziva is Bar Kochva. He rebelled against the Roman government. Malach Tartin Shaninu Palga. So he was actually king for 2.5 years. Amar Lehu, he told them, Rabbanan, I'm Mashiach, I'm the Mashiach. Amrule, they told him, right, Mashiach Tiv the Monach Vadayin, he's able to smell. Nechtir, are you able to smell things? Since they saw that he was not Monach, they knew he was a Mashiach. Katlu, they killed him. Daniel, Chadiah, and also the they also had 6 blessings because the Chtivu is written by them. Asherem Baem Kol Maum. וטוב מראה ומשכילה וחוכמה ויודע דעת והנה מדע שכוח בהם לעמוד בהיכל המלך ועמדם מספר ללשון כסתים. So again, here you also have 6 different things. They had no blemishes, טובי מראה, משכילים בכל חוכמה, יודע דעת, מביני מדע ובעלי כוח. Those are the 6. And the Gemara is going to explain, he says, מהי אשר מהם כל מאום? אבל מלחמה ברב חנינא אפילו קריבדא דקוסליתא לא עברו. They didn't even have like ממש הסריטה כד... When they used to come, they used to bloodlet. Nothing. They were very, very bari. They were very healthy. And what does it mean? ואשר כוח בהם לעמוד בהיכל המלך? אמר רבי חמא בר חנינא מלמד שהיו אונסים את עצמם מן השחוק ומן השכר ומן השינה מעמידים את עצמם בשעה שנצחים מפניהם מפני עמד מלכות. Right? They used to be able to come and force themselves not to laugh, right? Not to speak dvarim b'telim, not to sleep. And they used to stop themselves when they were doing the nikvehem because of Imam Malchut. What does that mean? When they were in front of the king, they would stop from all these things in order that they shouldn't become mitkaneh in front of the melech. And then obviously, Bezat Hashem, we continue. Yeah. So again, we're the second wide line where it says, Vayu Bahem. Vayi Bahem Ibnei Yehuda, Daniel Chayim Shel Zariah, Ma Rabbi Elazar, Kulam Ibnei Yehuda. They're all from Bnei Yehuda. Daniel was Bnei Yehuda, but Chaniah Mishal Vazariah was from the other Shvatim. So obviously, if you're going to tell me that it came from Shevet Yehuda, then it makes sense because they were coming from the Melech and everything, that they had 6 berachot each of those people because it was coming from Ruth, Hamoaviyah. Okay? Next. So they were going to become sarisim, right? Ministers in Melech Bavel. My sarisim, what does it mean now? Sarisim, Rav Amar sarisim mamash. Rav comes and he says, mamash they were sarisim. That during their days, there was no mamashut anymore to Avodah Zarah. Why? Because of the miracle of the Kivshan Ha'esh, the fiery furnace, nobody believed in Avodah Zarah anymore. So Bishlam Mandamar, it's good according to Mandamar that says Avodah Zarah b'mehem. That's why it says in the pasuk. V'chavala iti behon, that there's no chabala upetza. Ela Mandamar, but according to the Mandamar that says that they were sarisim mamash that means that they were mamash ministers in Babylonia, right? So he says, what does it mean v'chavala iti behon? Right? They were baalei mumim, right? Because the melech came and he was misares otam. Right? It says here the Gemara could have said that Yiladim asher mahem kol maum means that they weren't able to have children. So he says, V'aktiv, it's written, V'reach nur la'adat behon. That the reach of the fire didn't even come into them. It didn't go into them at all. So therefore, why does it say V'chaval la'ati behon? So it says, La chavla v'lo reicha. It wasn't a chavla because of the fire and not the reach of the fire. Which means, you know that many times just even the reach of the fire causes a lot of bad things. We know that they say about 9/11, they say that a lot of people that they were in the area, right, they suffered for many, many years of even breathing problems and everything that just because of the smoke and everything. And they weren't in the Twin Towers. They were just on the out. You know, I mean, they were right because of the entire thing. So Bishlam and the Mandamar Nisar Savodah, it's good to the Mandamar that they became Nisar Savodah during their days. That's what it says. But according to the Mandamar, that they became a mash sarisim, right? Mishtai krav b'gnuta de tzaddik. He says what the Torah is going to speak about the gnut of the tzaddikim, that they were sarisim. That means he went and he castricized them. He made them that they weren't able to have children. Well, the pasuk is going to come and going to start talking about these things. What's going on? So answers the Gemara, have a boo. You're right. They both were that. Meaning they were sarisim mamash, right? But the kavanah is nisar savodah zarah bimehem. So it was both of them. Okay, so Bishlam and Mandamar, it's good according to Mandamar Sarisim Mamash. Hainu dichtiv, that's why it says in Pasuk, V'vetivu chamoti yad vashem, tov mi banim ubanot. That they didn't have boys and girls. And that's why it's Yad Vashem. Here's, by the way, this is where the name comes from, about Yad Vashem. Right? So it says, Yad Vashem, tov mi banim ubanot. So that's what it says, Yad Vashem lefi pshuto ukemo Shem Olam. Right? Zikaron v'Shem Tov lanetzach. Now you understand why it's called Yad Vashem. It's a Zikaron v'Shem Tov lanetzach. It's a remembrance. And it's a good name forever, for eternity. Right? The Torah Chaim comes and he says, Shadam sheish lo banim areim tomchim bolet ziknuto. And that's the Yad Lishan Aleim. V'gam yesh lo Shem Olam, shalidei kach lo yimaches shemo miYisrael. So therefore, they're coming and they're doing Yad Mishem, is going to be Yoter Tov mi banim ubanot, because the Yad Vashem is going to help even better than boys and girls. So that's why it's the remembrance. So he says, what does it mean now? Tov mi banim ubanot. Right? They were slisim. They didn't have banim ubanot. Right? So he said, what does that mean? But maybe they had it beforehand. Right? So he says, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, mi banim shayu lehem kfar umetu. No, they had, but they died. Meaning their children died during their lifetimes. So therefore, that's why he said that he's going to be Yad Vashem is going to be better than even banim ubanot, because they didn't have any more children afterwards. They weren't able to. So that's it. Okay? My Shem Olam eten lo asher lo yikaret. What does it mean I'm going to give them a Shem Olam? But it says yiten lo. Amar Rabbi Tanchu darash bar kapara betzipori. The Sefer Daniel. Sefer Daniel is called on his name, and therefore he was one of the Sadisim. So therefore that was the Shem Olam. Shem Olam, he had a Sefer. So that's why you have Sefer Daniel. Sefer Daniel is called on his name. Mik they called Mile de Ezra. Says 1 second. The majority of the words of Ezra, right, which is basically Sefer Ezra, which is called his name, it was Nehemiah b'Chachaliah that he said it. Nehemiah b'Chachaliah. Why didn't he call it on Nehemiah? Meaning, why isn't it called Nehemiah instead of calling it, right, Ezra? So I'm going to be because he went and he was machzik tova la'atzmo. Shneimar zochra li Elohai letova. Remember me, my God, for the good. Meaning, when a person comes and he's mitgaeh and he always calls for himself names, or he starts saying about himself certain things, he actually gets forgotten. So therefore he comes and he says, so that's why he says it's not going to be called on his name. That means even though the majority of the Sefer was Nehemiah b'Chachaliah, it's not called Nehemiah, it's called Ezra. David nami meimar amar, but he says 1 second, but David also said, right? We say this before every single one of the hakafot. Right? So he says, no, David was not saying to Hashem out of haughtiness, remember me, look how good I am. The opposite. He's asking for mercy. Right? Is Rachameu the Kabai. He's asking for mercy. Hashem, please, right? Don't remember, only remember my good actions, right? Not that remember my good actions because I'm so good. Please remember my good actions. Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef comes and he says another reason why Be'emet Sefer Ezra is not called Sefer Nehemiah. Rav Yosef Amar Minesh Siper B'Gnutan Shel Rishonim, because he spoke about the gnut of the Rishonim. Shneimar v'apachot HaRishonim Shel Lefanai Yechbidu Al Ha'am ויאכלו מהם מלחם ויין אחד אחר כסף שקלים 40. וגם על דניאל שגדול ממנו הוא סיפר, and he also spoke against Daniel. How do we know that he's גדול ממנו? תכתיב, וראיתי אני דניאל לבדי את המראה. Right, I saw the מראה. אנשים לא ראו אותו, they didn't say it, אבל חרדה גדולה נפלה להם, but they had a big חרדה. ויברחו בחבא, and they ran away, they were hiding. אנשים אשר יומי לא ראו את המראה, who are אנשים? רבי ירמיה, right, he comes and he says, some people say, סמכיה ברבא, חגי זכריה ומלאכי. So if Daniel was even greater than Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, which were Nevi'im, and they didn't see it, but he saw, but they were still afraid, because many times the Mazal still sees something, even though they don't see something, right? There's a based upon the Gemara Megillah, Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. So he says, right? So therefore, obviously, they were greater than Nehemiah. So therefore, that's how we know that they were greater. So it says the Gemara, Inu adif minau, each one was greater than each other in that case. Why? Inu adifu minei, they were greater than him. Dinu Nevi'eh, he wasn't even a Nevi. Because Chagai Zechariah Malachi was a Navi, Shenavu Yisrael. Now, Daniel, was not a Navi, but at the end of the day, he wasn't sent a Nevuah to tell the Bnei Yisrael. The Yodif Minah, but he was greater than them because he saw and they didn't see. So that's what the Gemara is going to ask. So if they didn't see, so why are they afraid? The Gemara answers, even though they didn't see anything, Mazalayu Chazed, their Mazal saw it. Sometimes a person gets afraid and they don't know why. They're looking around, they don't see anything, but their Mazal sees something. So because their Mazal sees something, their Mazal is the one that's going to be afraid. That's Rashi. Rashi says it's the guardian angel of the human being, right? Which is the one that's getting afraid.